And the second assignment that you guys have for week 1 is describe your acoustic environment. Now, this is the first time we're going to get to actually physically record. So what we're showing you in this assignment is how to use microphones, how to do what they call gain staging for your actual, signal levels getting to your digital recording system. This gain staging is also needed if you were going to an analog system. If for whatever reason you do still use analog, which I love the sound of analog. Some studios still use analog. The analog 2-inch tape machine, for instance. That gain staging is extremely important for that as well. With the describing your acoustic environment, you'll see as you can walk through, I give you quite a few different things. Here's the reverb killer box, how to build that if you wanted to use it. It's all there. The other thing is there's this mic polar pattern. It's an interactive guide again.
0 degrees.
That basically shows you how the angle of the microphone could change, as well as also the different types of. Many of the professional microphones will have a switch that turn it to either bidirectional, omnidirectional, hypercardioid, and cardioid. And you'll be learning about those, through vocabulary as well. But this is kind of cool because
45 degrees.
You can see how the audio changes as you click on the mic. As I get towards the back of a cardioid, you can see the level has gone down and the audio quality also changes. So it's important to understand how to use your mics.
0 degrees.
Like, you always want to face the microphone wherever the logo is. That would be the front of the mic. If it's a... let me open up this picture real quick. Where is it? Oh, there it is. If it's this handheld type microphone, then you want to, of course, aim the audio towards the top of the microphone. So you speak into the microphone. So all these things are about understanding how we use our microphones as well as also our acoustics. Each room will have a different sound. And depending on your room, your voice or anything played into that room will physically change as to how it sounds. There's something called early reflections that happen. Sound goes directly from my vocal, my mouth basically, my vocal cords, you hear the vibration. I am pushing air out. You hear the direct signal going into the microphone as I speak. But at the same time, sound is coming out and bouncing off the walls near me. And then they come and hit the microphone. Because it's a longer distance between, the signal coming from my vocal directly to the microphone and the signal bouncing off the wall and then coming to the microphone, there's a timing difference. We get something called comb filtering, which changes the frequency response of that microphone. You also get, when there's a long enough of time delay, we get something called reverb. And that reverb also gets recorded as well. A quick way of checking what the reverb sounds like inside of any room is just walk into the room and clap. You will hear the reflections happening. So clap into the room, listen to how the clap sounds, and you can hear how the clap sounds quite different depending on which room. Go and walk around your house, clap in each room and listen to it. Start understanding what's happening. When a room is completely just drywall and there's no furniture, you will get this really, very bouncy sounding reverb that's in that room. It also takes our vocal, and because of all those bounces and that reverb, makes it a little harder to understand. So what we have you do is, for this assignment, we're going to create an actual recording of you speaking in 2 different rooms. You need to go try that clap test and then pick your most livest room. In other words, the one that has the most reverb and you can really hear bounces. And then pick another room that has very little reverb or no bounces. Let's say you walk into that closet full of clothing. That would be a perfect example of a dead room where you don't hear any of those reflections. everything is being absorbed by that clothing around you. So you're going to go and record in those two rooms. Let me go to over here to Logic. I'm going to create a new session. So as you follow the instructions, it's going to ask you to go ahead and create a new session. Okay, I'm going to need 2 to 3 audio tracks, so I'm just going to create 3, have an extra there. I go to audio number 1. Let me shrink this down so you guys can see some of the other stuff. You'll see it says create 2 mono audio tracks, name them Vox 1 and Vox 2. So here we go back into naming stuff. We do this before we record, so that way our audio will be named after this. So anything I record now will start being named audio 1 and then take number 1, 2, 3, whatever take you're on. If I go to track number 2, instead of it just called audio 2, I'm going to call this Vox 2. So that's our second vocal. You could also, most audio engineers will use the word Vox. I don't know, it just kind of became a tradition. Same thing with guitar. It might be just called GTR. These are just abbreviations that you'll see. But as I select Vox 1, you can see my microphone right now is tied into it. So you see these levels moving. Let me close these so you could really see everything. On the side here, you could also see my vocal. As I speak, you're seeing the vocal levels go up. Notice that I am basically between this -18 and this -6 as our level. That is a perfect situation. There you saw me just peak a little bit, but I never go into the red. We don't want to clip. Anytime we start clipping the vocal, we're actually distorting the vocal. So this is about the gain staging. And where I set this up would be on your interface, that level, that input level. So you want to turn up that input level to the point where it's between that -18 to -6 area. What this does is gives you enough level that you'll learn about this later, all your dynamic effects will have enough level to be able to work with the dynamics of that signal. If I stand and don't say any words for just a second, you'll see what we call the noise floor. That's the general noise that happens within any room. Let's try that out. You could see it's around that -45, 40 to 45 area for me. So that's my noise floor. If I'm recording and my level's way down, then, well, my noise floor is going to still be here, and my vocals are going to, let's say, only come up to 30 or so. -30. So that doesn't give me enough dynamic range. What that means is that, hey, let's say we're mixing this song. I've recorded the vocals too low. Now I need to bring up the vocal because I want it to be heard in the mix. Well, my noise floor also comes up. That means I get a noisy vocal. I see somebody pointing out fan is moving, so yes, that has to do with some of the sound. Fans, lighting, TVs, all of that stuff puts out sound. Your noisy neighbors. So you have to think about all these different things when you're actually recording. The dynamic range of your level is very important, especially when you start getting into the mixdown and adding those dynamic effects. And what I mean by dynamic effects, we'll be learning about them. EQ, for instance, dynamic effect. Compression, so compressors. Gates are dynamic effects. All of these are dynamic effects that we use a lot in our mixes to make things sound better. But if we don't have enough dynamic range in our input signal between the original signal and our noise floor, then it's extremely hard to work with those dynamic effects to get exactly what we want, especially if we want really clean, recordings where we could really work on these things and make them sound great. If all I hear is fan noise and all this stuff in my vocal, then no matter how good my equipment is or whatever, heck, my vocal's going to still be very reverberant because of the room, and I have fan noise in my vocal. Horrible. So when you hear the song, you're like, wait a minute, I hear a fan happening every time I hear the vocal. That's not cool. So we want to make sure we get, nice clean vocals, and this is what you're going to be learning about, is understanding what's happening in your rooms to really hear the different things. So back to this, we want you to pick 2 different rooms. Let me point this out as well. When you choose your audio tracks, you'll notice it pops up automatically. Logic has a way of trying to, guess as to what you're doing. So it automatically sets stuff up as, first of all, as a mono input. So I've got my microphone hooked up to input number 1, and it's mono. If I click on this, you'll see it becomes 2 circles. Now my microphone is via USB, so it actually gives audio on both sides. It automatically knows to put into both sides, both inputs. But if you are using your interface with the microphone, you're only going to see audio on the left side, because your input 1 would be your left side, your input 2 will be your right side. So definitely we want to keep that in a mono mode since we're using one single microphone. Now that is still feeding a stereo out. So in other words, I'm able to pan that completely over to one side or to the other side. And that's just clicking on this and dragging up or down as to how you can pan it. Another trick for you guys is if you hold down Option and click, it automatically zeroes out whatever. You could even have levels. Hold down Option, click on the fader, it will jump automatically to 0. So real quick trick for you guys is hold down Option, click on it, and it'll zero out whatever you have. So the gain staging, very important. We want to make sure you get a good level when you're recording. Now, what we're going to physically record is you need to pick 2 different rooms. It could be a bathroom that has a lot of reflections, or a living room, and come over here. Now we don't want to clap into the microphone, because if I clap right now into the microphone, once I've set up the correct recording levels for my vocal, of course the clap will be a lot louder. So just kind of pull to the side, clap. You will hear that room in the recording. We want you to do this on purpose. The other thing we ask you to is, for instance, stand a little distance from the microphone. Normally, yes, we want to have the microphone right up against the, the singer holds the microphone nice and close to their vocal. So that way they capture mainly the vocal, not so much of stuff around there. But for this assignment, we're actually doing it on purpose. We're going to pull the microphone farther away. So that way we also pick up all those reflections, and that way you can really hear what I'm trying to teach you guys as far as how the acoustics really matter with the vocal. So let's say we pick the bathroom, we record in the bathroom. We require you guys to record for 45 seconds, so about 45 seconds, and speak about what's, clap and explain to me what you're hearing. I hear lots of reflections. I could tell definitely, especially after watching the videos that we point you towards, you'll start understanding that the drywall or tiles, make a different type of sound, different than, let's say, walls that if you had carpeting or acoustic treatment on the walls, you'll hear all those type of things. So I want to, in the recording, it's just your voice explaining what you're hearing. Hey, when I clapped, I heard all these flutter echoes happening. It seemed like they were all coming from the corners of the room. Explain those type of things, what you're hearing. Start listening to what is actually happening. As audio engineers, we start, paying attention to every little sound. Sound is our life, or it becomes our life. Music is our life. And it's funny because sometimes when I go out with some of my friends who are also engineers, we could be going to Universal Studios, and I'm just talking to one of them, and I'll be like, hey, wait, you hear that? And we're standing underneath a dome, and I can hear my voice completely morphed and changed. and I'll be like, oh, that's cool. I need to bring a recording mic out here and record myself, just to get a completely different sound. So your hearing will become even more finite with as you guys continue using these tools and everything, because you start understanding sound and how it changes. So here's where we're going to start you off. We're having you guys listen. It's very important to listen to stuff. So the first room, record yourself explaining what the room sounds like. I don't want to hear, oh, the way the room is decorated. I don't want to hear, well, I have nice pretty curtains over here and they're blue, and well, I've got this china set that my mother gave me. That has nothing to do with acoustics. I want to hear about what the room sounds like. Explain to me what you're hearing. So that's the first room. Go ahead and explain that first room. Then go to another room. Do the same thing. You're going to clap. Now this room will be a different room. Let's say it's that closet. So the closet with all the clothing. Clap and listen to what it sounds like, and then start speaking and going, well, wow, I can definitely hear how the clothing really absorbs the sound, and I get nothing but the original, direct signal coming from me versus all the reflections. So those are the type of things we want you to do. Listen back even, record yourself if you want to, then go back and record yourself again, explaining what you heard. However you want to do it, but we're going to need you to have two vocals, Vox 1. So let's say Vox 1 records 45 seconds, and then start from the end of Vox 1 and start recording on Vox 2, in other words, another track, and record for another 45 seconds explaining the second room. And that's the basis of the assignment. We have you guys actually record twice. The levels are important. We check for levels. We check to make sure you're, explaining the acoustics correctly, understanding. If I hear you telling me something like, well, the bathroom, I don't hear any reflections or anything, I'd be like, something's wrong. I didn't quite get this information to you. So I would explain to you, what might be incorrect from what you said. So that's why we have you guys actually do this. This is a listening, as well as I need to see that, make sure you're starting to understand how to proper recordings. I forget who it was who was asking about recordings, your vocals, and you're doing some work. This is definitely where you're going to start seeing that. Recording your levels are very important. Also, the acoustics in the room that you have are very important. Most of the time, we want very dry recordings. In other words, no reverb whatsoever. We'd much rather be able to control that later in the mix. Now, I will point out, there are times where, wow, that room sounds amazing. I want that reverb. So then we would actually mic it up and record that way. This happens in special drum rooms. Sometimes a room is physically designed to give drums a nice acoustic feel. That type of room, we'd actually set up microphones in the room to pick up those reflections and sound bouncing back to give that reverb on those drums. This is why some drummers will pay quite a bit of money to go to special studios that are designed for drums. They have physical drum rooms that they use to record in. So the acoustics make a huge difference in how things sound. The safest is to go ahead and just record dry where you have no acoustic. In other words, you've acoustically treated your recording room, whatever, and then you can add those reverbs, those delays, and everything else. Okay, levels. Somebody's asking level-wise. Where do I have an extra interface? So on the front of your interface, you actually have your first level. That is the mic input. That mic input, you'll bring it up to where you'll start seeing levels between that -18 and -6. So currently, as you guys see these meters right now, I'm set perfectly to where my vocal is bouncing around that area. Now, if I accidentally go over and go all the way to, let's say I'm loud, you can see I'm starting to get into the red. but I have not peaked, that's perfect. Because we're giving ourselves what we call a headroom of 6 dB to be able to, if the singer accidentally gets too loud, it's no big deal, I have not peaked. The minute this peak level turns completely red and it starts giving you numbers above 0, we know we have clipped. That means I have basically taken a nice waveform and chopped it off. In digital, we don't want that. That actually starts giving you distortion, and it's not a pretty sound. You could ruin a vocal very easily by distorting it. Should we use the levels in Logic? Yes. The levels, this meter right here in Logic will give you a great example. The one on the actual hardware sometimes doesn't have enough finite, levels. You might only have 3 LEDs to really see a level. So it's a little harder to follow. This gives you a much better realization as to what your level is coming in at. The recordings should be between, I see one question as far as the recording levels. The recording levels should be between, again, that -18 and -6. So anywhere there where it's bouncing around in there, perfect. That's a good level for you. We don't want to see recordings where it looks like almost like a straight line going across here, and even though your vocal's there, I'd have to bring it up, and I will actually get the noise floor being brought up as well. As far as I see someone else asking, how do I get the mic in both rooms? Well, usually most people, because you're just using your laptop and your interface, you're able to move it, physically take it over to the next room, then record in that room. Something else is if you have the bigger interface, you probably got the 2 mic cables and the 2 mics. You could hook up both mic cables to give you a little bit longer length. Let's say you choose your room where you have the thing mounted in, just in case you have it mounted, and you choose the hallway. So just try to get into 2 different rooms. Someone's asking, doesn't that cause noise? As far as the length of the microphone cable, usually you're pretty good with levels or lengths. It's not until you start really getting to very long lengths of cable that you will start noticing any kind of real degradation. The microphone cables that you got should be decent enough where you don't lose any signal. Cables, yes, are very important. The really cheap cables, you start running into the resistance is too high as well as the capacitance of that cable. And you start creating what they call a low pass filter. And if it happens to be where that low pass filter's knee frequency is, it's within our audio field of hearing, which is between 20 and 20K, we end up filtering out, and your microphone cable could start sounding like a muffled cable. In other words, it doesn't allow the high frequencies to go through, but a decent cable will actually have that knee frequency way above our hearing range to where we don't hear that physical cable. The cables are balanced, which definitely helps. The balanced or direct. Whenever you could do any kind of recording or anything, if you could stick with balanced lines and balanced cables, that is the best, because you relieve something that happens with unbalanced, which is the way it's set up. We could actually induce noise from external situations. In other words, magnetic fields will get right into there, and we end up with ground noise as well as all kinds of other stuff. Someone's asking as far as the type of cables that they have. Yes, any cable's usable. You'll be learning more in depth, and I'll even explain for you guys more about cabling. I've got an electronics background as well. I used to actually be in the Air Force and worked on robots, so I totally understand cabling and everything else. I'll explain more in depth later for you guys, but it's not something we really need to worry about it right now for this actual assignment. Alright, so all you're doing is on that, you're recording those things. Now, what do we need to turn in? You shouldn't need to boost or do anything. You could keep everything right at 0 for this. We're not going to get into panning or anything else. This is just about getting good levels. As you guys can see on the screen right here, these are actually decent levels. You're actually able to see the waveform right from the main page of Logic. If we see nothing but a straight line, then most likely your levels are probably pretty low. So make sure your levels, again, are between that -18 and -6 level. When you play them back, you should be able to see the audio level being about the exact same as you recorded it. Now, what do you need to turn in after you've done this? Well, you're going to need to turn in the correctly named Logic session as a package this time. In other words, with the audio files. I want to be able to download the Logic session and be able to hit play, and your audio will be there. Definitely remember to zip it before uploading. Just that way, no chances of it giving you any kind of error while you're uploading. You're also going to bounce down an MP3. So you're going to need to bounce down an MP3. And then the last thing is we need to get a screenshot. Screenshots are actually pretty easy if you don't need a camera. I've seen where a couple students actually take their phones or whatever and take a picture of the screen itself. When we say screenshot, it's not really what we mean. You could actually take a screenshot very easily by holding down Shift, Command, then 3 will actually take a screenshot and put it on your desktop. Let me go ahead and do that for you guys. So Shift, Command, 3. You'll hear that little shutter type sound. And right here, right on the desktop, open it up. You'll see exactly what was on at the time that I took that screenshot. So it shows you everything that is on your desktop. The other method, I'm going to go ahead and move this to the trash. I don't really need it. The other method is Shift Command 4, and you'll notice my cursor turns to this crosshair. I can move it to what I want to take a screenshot of, click, drag, still holding it, then release, and it will take a screenshot of what I selected. So back over here, you guys can see it only took a screenshot of the physical area that I selected. So Shift Command 3 or 4, your choice, depending on what you want to do, will give you the capability of instantly taking a shot or screenshot of what's on your screen. This is great for using it for these assignments, as well as also, heck, if you want to, you're on a website and you want to just take a quick screenshot of the phone numbers of the store that you want, instead of having to go look for the website each time, you can take a screenshot and have all that information instantly in a little photograph that could be on your desktop. So very easy to do. Screenshots are great. I see someone is asking as far as can you create a folder and put all these files into the folder and then compress the folder? Yes, you are welcome to do that, or you could just upload the individual files separately. So it's all up to you, your choice there. The grading checklist, as you guys can see, what I'm going to be looking for is that you submitted the Logic file, and that the Logic file, of course, is named correctly. In other words, your last name, your underscore, your first name, underscore, RPR Acoustics. That's this assignment. I'm going to look to make sure you had your microphones and everything set up correctly. In other words, your microphone connected to input 1 of the interface. How can I tell? Well, like I said, Logic actually does this stuff instantly for you. So unless you changed it and messed something up, you're fine. You'll be able to see that, hey, look, input number 1 connected to input number 1 of the interface. Great. Your vocal tracks are named Vox 1 and Vox 2. So in other words, that you created those 2 tracks and named, and that the outputs are set to stereo, which again, it's automatically done for you, so you don't even have to change that. But we want to make sure that you understand that it needs to be on the stereo out, not set to some bus or something, which you can do all kinds of crazy stuff, and you'll start understanding more as we keep going, how you could reroute stuff within Logic. But for now, just keep it to the stereo bus. The Vox 1, that it's 45 seconds, as far as that you recorded on Vox 1, on Vox 2 track, another 45 seconds again, and make them staggered, because if you put them both on top of each other, when you play this back, it's two people talking to me. It's a little harder for me to follow. So think about it as, okay, Vox 1 first, and then Vox 2. Oh, those two tracks recorded, you can see each thing is broken down to points. Gain staging. I want to make sure that, hey, when your fader is at 0, that level is going around that -18 to -6 area. I want to get you into that habit. This is a dBFS, what you're seeing, which is FS is for full scale, so this is dBFS. And this is a habit that you really need to get into, because your recording levels are so important. Very important to the way your mixes are going to come out. So I want to stress that again, between the -18 to -6 area. That is a perfect area for you to use. If you could get it closer and you know for sure nothing will accidentally bounce above, heck, go up as close as you can, to the -0, but don't clip. In other words, the minute you clip, you're actually destroying the vocal. This is why we choose that -6 as being your highest point, so that way we have 6 dB of just in case of, it's what we call headroom. So we have 6 dB of headroom, that if accidentally that singer gets a little loud or that instrument plays a little louder, you won't clip. This is why we show you that -6 to 18 trick. And this is used by practically every engineer. The next thing we check for is that your proper acoustic assessment of both recording environments. In other words, this is where we're saying, make sure that you're speaking of what is actually happening sound-wise in your room. We don't want to see, oh, I've got pretty curtains over here that are blue, and an explanation of what's in your room. We want more so what is happening. If you explain anything in your room, it's kind of like, okay, well, this room is a very large room and it's all drywall or concrete walls, and I'm hearing a lot of reflections because of that. That's fine, but if you're just saying, oh, the blue walls and I've got carpeting and my family's pictures are hanging on the wall, that's not really an acoustic environment. We want to hear about the acoustic environment. So that's that one. Next thing you'll notice, bounce at 128 kbps, so kilobytes per second, as an MP3, and then uploaded. We tell you 128. You'll start learning that 128 kilobytes per second is perfect for spoken word. There's not enough frequency information that you have to worry about having it at 320. Now, yes, you can just go ahead and put it at 320. That's a much better format. You'll learn about, of course, in that first assignment, all about this. But for this one, it's fine at 128, just because all you're doing is spoken word. Next thing is the screenshot. So we check to make sure that your screenshot should basically look like this one. We give you an example where it shows your two vocals and your faders. So that needs to be uploaded. And the last things you'll see are just if you start adding effects and stuff like this, we don't want you to do that just yet. So that's why we have a 5-point penalty. And lastly, if things are turned in late, you get a penalty as well. So try to make that due date, definitely. Well, we have basically a grace period of 3 days that this late completion penalty is in. If it starts going above, if you're trying to turn stuff in a week later, 2 weeks later, basically we don't really accept that stuff. So definitely try to make those due dates. This is another reason why I have everything up there and open for you guys to be able to turn it in on time or earlier. In fact, if you turn stuff earlier, sometimes I'll grade it earlier and even give you a chance to work on stuff, as I'm giving you feedback on all this. All right, with this one, this stuff will help you with this project, and it's the Logic Pro X Essential Training. This is all on lynda.com. If you guys remember how to get to Lynda, it's you go to your picture right here under Resources, Lynda. This gives you a direct link. That way, it's not going to ask you for your credentials and everything else. Quite often, if you go directly, just type in lynda.com, then it's a mess and you can't get in, and they want you to pay. So use the direct link that we have for you in FSO. That way you can get there. I see a question about objection for the 3 days. As far as late submission, it's going to be 20 points, whether it's on day 1, 2, or 3 after the due date. So it doesn't really change. You just end up losing 20 points. So if you've gotten everything else right and you were late, unfortunately you're going to get an 80 on that assignment versus getting the full 100. The other things that are great, this is talking about microphone basics and hearing the difference between the different patterns and exploring all these different other things. This is under audio recording techniques with Bobby Owinski. Great engineer. You've probably heard some of his music that he's mixed. He walks through quite a few different things in that lynda.com video or videos to explain as far as recording. All right, again, I have for you guys that video here. If you want to see again how to bounce down stuff to an MP3, this walks you through. Same thing with the session. I have these 2 videos in most of the first assignments to give you guys the capability of just quickly viewing it to refresh your memory if you need to know. Hopefully, as you guys get to later assignments, you won't need to view these because you've already churned in quite a few. And you know how to save an MP3. You know how to or bounce down an MP3 and save your Logic session.